Usatine Media presents a field guide to wilderness medicine. We can start looking at the app by going to the contents. And while looking at the contents, we'll see we've got things such as high altitude medicine, avalanche safety and rescue, hypothermia, frostbite. Then we move on to heat and fire, burns and smoke, solar radiation, really a wealth of information. Chest trauma, orthopedic issues, firearms, lacerations, pain. I mean, this is a guide that everyone should have if you're away from civilization, whether that be in the wilderness or even in a third world country. There's so much good information here to help with travel and all kinds of issues that might come up away from your sort of urban medical environments. So if we look at the information, like we can see the Wilderness Medical Kit. So what is a kit that you would want to bring with you? You ask all these questions, and then based on that, you can design various different kits that would be helpful in various environments. So that is one thing you could look at. We could basically go to all, I mean, there's so many interesting things. Aquatic skin disorders, that sounds interesting. Look at these interesting photographs. Here's sea moss dermatitis. Here's another condition, microcelius. I can barely pronounce it, but this is something from the sea, another kind of condition, all related to being in the sea and getting various different rashes. Here's an aquagenic urticaria. Here's a schistosome problem causing a dermatitis of the feet and ankles. So very interesting. You can go straight back to the text and you can read about these things. Also, while you're in any particular chapter, you can jump around and see all, like here's a sea cucumber dermatitis. Now that is interesting. Okay, so what happens when you get in contact with a sea cucumber? I think we'll stay away from sea cucumbers. In any case, we can go back to the contents this way, and we can look at all kinds of interesting things. If you're in an area where there's malaria, here's information about malaria, all kinds of good stuff, even the interpretation of blood smears. So if we use the home button, we can go back to the contents, or we can go straight to search. Let's say we want to learn more about lacerations. I've already done that search before, so it keeps that. And now we can learn about lacerations. And I saw something that I thought was quite interesting, is this way to close the skin without having anesthesia, because you put the tape on either side of the laceration, and then you actually sew the tape together so that you don't have to have anesthesia to actually be sewing the patient. And this can be done with any kind of thread. You don't actually need to have suture. This is your basic thread for sewing clothing, using this to close a laceration. So interesting, very interesting stuff here. We can go to the text, of course, and read more about it. Also, you can hair tie a scalp laceration. Very good practical things to use in the wilderness. If we wanted to write a note about this, let's say we wanted to make a note about, keep your thread handy, right? I mean, that's, we can make a note like that. And the note's been saved. We could also bookmark it if we want. Bookmark it. And if we go back to home, and now we want to actually see, well, what bookmarks have we made? Here are bookmarks of text that we've already made. Some bookmark of images. Here's actually how do you do a breech delivery. Hopefully you'll never be in that situation without having had good training. But, if you had to do it, you could look it up and do your best. So this is how to do a breach. We have other bookmarks here. Wilderness eye injuries. If there's a hemorrhage in the orbit, I hope that's a scary idea, but it's a way to take care of it. So those are bookmarks. These are the notes that we made. I made a note on a text. If we wanted, we could also make a note on an image, which I did. We said this was interesting, and this was keep your thread handy. So little notes, but we might want to say something more profound in the future. We can always go back to our contents, and there's so many different chapters. This is a fascinating app based on a fantastic book. And it's just amazing all the stuff that's here. Lightning injuries. Actually, people die from lightning strikes, and there's some interesting information about what do you do if there has been a lightning strike. Hopefully, the person is still alive, and they can help them survive. All kinds of stuff here. Let's say we want to go back to the contents one more time and look for some other information. Let's say you're in a cold area where you're concerned about hypothermia, and you can also jump around and get all kinds of information about different levels of hypothermia and how to resuscitate when this occurs, because there may be ventricular fibrillation from hypothermia. So these are things that can happen. This is also how do you create an insulation wrap for someone who has been subjected to hypothermia or has become hypothermic. So let's go back here. Let's take a look at more about the app, how to use the app. So we pretty much went through this, but you can refresh your memory by doing that. You can learn about the developers. Now, this has been developed by Usatine Media. I am Dr. Usatine, and it's a pleasure to bring these apps to you, along with Peter Erickson, our lead software developer. And there's all interesting information within the about, but really this app speaks for itself when you see the numerous chapters of interesting as well as useful information for practicing medicine outside of, again, your typical medical center. I just love to even just look at this table of contents. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed our app today, and please take a look at some of our other apps. They can all be found on the App Store and at our website, usatinemedia.com. Thank you for your attention.